So, time has come once again to speak as witches and wizards do. I'm Daniel and
I'm Michaela Gaffinstone.
we're your hosts for the Think Like a Wizard podcast. Welcome to season 4, episode 3, Magic Strategies. Wasn't sure exactly how to word the title exactly, but so I thought, you know what? First, we'll put the listeners up to date. So, this is episode 3 of season 3. And, since we've started season 4, we've only actually been recording one episode a month.
Yeah, we've
Part
had a
of
lot
it is
going on.
Yeah. So part of it is recovering from, well, not recovering, but because we're doing, as like I said in episode 1, right? We're doing a spell per episode. So the spells we're doing are fairly large and of consequence. So they've taken recovery time, time to prepare, time to recover from. So yeah, so it's been 3 months and 3 episodes.
Yeah, it's been pretty wild with the breaks, but so much has been going on, and I was sick for a while,
Mm,
which hasn't happened since 2022.
mm,
And the interesting thing with that was three people, right? And the subject is flu. One person of the three had the flu vaccine. Two people did not. One person who had the flu vaccine got very sick. One of the two people who did not got very sick. The third person didn't get anything. So, what does that tell you? It tells you it's a little more hit and miss than we'd like.
mm.
And I was the one that had not had the flu vaccine and got sick. But then, my son had had the vaccine and he was as sick as me, and we were both in the same place. He'd come to visit and he got sick as soon as he got here. So, which was a blow, and he was sick for the whole time he was here. So that was kind of an interesting thing, but the energies were up. There was a lot of transformation happening, both in his life and mine. And the upheaval was massive. And I think that played into the severity of the symptoms. Now, if that sounds wacky, you guys are listening to the wrong podcast
Yeah.
because because it's a thing. And I was having trouble breathing at one point, and there was so much going on. So yeah, it was quite wild. And
Yeah.
I was just recovering from the spells. Like that was just, she says, yeah, that was pretty big. And we have something big in motion now too.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the thing, right? I was sick in January.
Right.
So and I ended up doing essentially a deep cleanse and a metabolic reset just to kind of get my body back to functioning. So that was the first month gone.
And I was sick for pretty much all of February.
Yeah. So then that was February gone. But we managed to
Right.
get one episode in per month. And so
Hmm.
now we're back. So instead of being like several months ahead like we were, we'll be like a week ahead. So we can stay more current with the topics at hand as well. But let's see.
Although honestly, the way things are changing right now, I think a day ahead is difficult to stay up.
That's true.
Because so much is changing and happening. And we said when we recorded in 24, I almost said 23, when we
Mm.
recorded in 24, that there were going to be big changes and it was massive. And, we knew big stuff was coming. But I have to say, I've been sideswiped by some of the stuff that's going on. I hadn't anticipated that. So sometimes we can see something coming, but you can't necessarily know the timing or the magnitude. Like you can get an ish this is going to be big, but big can be a whole range, right? And this is
Mm.
going to be soon, and soon can be a range. So, just to sort of bring the listener up to speed on that one, we were in the direction. I was going to say ballpark, but honestly, I don't think anybody could be that close for what we have going on right now.
Mm.
But we did say it was going to be epic, as in massive, as in game changing. And I believe we are there. Yes, that is actually happening.
Yeah, it's but I think even like you can kind of use this as a bit of a lesson for precognition, if you will, or if you look back at the earlier history of the podcast when we were discussing about kind of well, the whole first season, right, was about knowing yourself and being prepared, like, and not letting things trip you up. That's why I kind of laid out on how your senses work, how your emotions work, and that. Because what gets in your way of your precognition or your ability to sense events coming is your own expectations. And neither Michaela and I expected things to work out like they did. And I think that kind of created a blind spot as well. Whereas we knew there was stuff. In this case, to actually zero in on what the actual thing was a bit harder, because when you're not expecting something, it's hard to give you the cues for something when you're actually, yeah. So this is an example of how you can get in your own way and not get proper information. You could still be in the ball or in the area, but not zeroed in because you're not expecting it. And you would think, no way that would happen, you know?
I think this is a phenomenal example, actually. The two of us, what we were predicting and where we're at now, it's a great example of how allowing the mundane to sit with you while you're looking at this gets in the way. It kind of puts blinkers on, right? Like this is outside of my experience, therefore it can't be a thing. And I think we both had a little bit of that slipping in there. Um, and that's okay, that's fine. That's kind of what happens. And when every time you experience it, you sort of be a little bit more aware and sort of, okay, so the next time I am going to be aware when my limitations come up or when my expectations come up. And if you're very fortunate, you might be aware. Otherwise, you may just forget again. That's kind of the nature of the beast of being on planet Earth, right? We have a big part of what's been coming up for me lately is we are separate from the source, from the spirit world. It's kind of necessary in order to be here and to have this experience. But a big part of what we need to do is find our way back. And the point is to learn while you're here, to fill in the gaps, and then to take that with you. So the more you can prepare yourself, if you will, and learn the things that are missing and make those connections again, the better it is. Like that's essentially what you're here for. And I hope that's clear because I've had so much stuff coming in lately that sometimes, I start talking and it's like, I don't know, was that gobbledygook?
I think I was actually saying something like that a couple of days ago. I was like, is anything I'm saying clear? Because I'm just saying stuff.
Right? And it's sometimes it's a bit difficult to balance, but you have to let the flow go, and then hopefully the listener will receive it in the way it's intended.
Yeah, it's funny actually. One of my big lessons the week that just passed was always remember to check your sources when you're looking at stuff on the internet. Because I've had conversations based on videos I've seen, and people go, that can't be right. And I'm like, well, I don't know. It's just what I heard. So we looked it up, and it's like, well, it's not wrong, but it's not as accurate as it could be, and it's a bit
Mhm.
misleading.
A lot of stuff out there right now is correct but not accurate, and
Right.
sometimes it's accurate but not correct. And it's important to know what you're working with. So yeah, it's tempting to go with the emotion of what you're looking at and
Hmm.
to repeat it. And sometimes people think that makes it right because they've heard it in more than one place. But really, it's now is actually a time to slow down in order to be solid with where you're moving. Because if this is a good example again of social media, if you're taking what you hear and running with it, you may be heading straight off a cliff. Like you might be going the wrong way. And being swayed by people's emotional arguments isn't helpful because this isn't about emotion. If it was about emotion, well, I don't know, we'd be going in an entirely different direction. But that's not what we're here for. It's what is this about? What's going on? And what I see, and this isn't original, somebody else pointed it out to me, but I'm kind of running with it, is we have billionaires, some on paper, some in fact, who are playing a giant game of Monopoly with the world and the people in it. And they don't actually care about the outcomes as much as who's winning on the board.
Hmm.
And if you break systems and you kind of collapse societies, everything becomes cheap to buy up, right? Because it's in disarray. And so if you're playing this game of Monopoly, you want to get as much as you can, as cheap as you can to see who wins. And we have a bunch of bored billionaires who have so lost their direction. They actually think all of this is the be all and end all. And they're playing a game of Monopoly, in which case, if you think about it that way, what they're doing doesn't have to make sense, which is good because much of it doesn't. So it doesn't have to be logical. It doesn't have to fit a narrative that you're aware of if people are playing a game and you're just the pawn.
You know what? That's actually, wording it that way is actually very good because it very much ties into what we're talking about in this episode because it's true, right? Part of our, I'll use the word failure to recognize the exact events was because we weren't expecting them. Like, I wasn't expecting people to, like, essentially, right? What's happening is the American way of life is being shorted like a stock, right? People are betting against the country. Unfortunately, it's also the president betting against the country and everyone working with them. So that wasn't something I was expecting. I was expecting people to trying to think what I was expecting actually.
Well,
I was
some of
expecting
what I
like
was
civil
expecting,
unrest, and
some of what I was expecting is in fact happening, but it's happening at a faster pace than I anticipated. I thought we had more
mm,
time, and I'm very disappointed that we don't.
mm,
But a bunch of things like rolling back women's rights, for example, totally knew that was coming. Yeah, that was absolutely, it was on the cards. If you've looked at Project 2025, you know that's a thing. Was he going to be vindictive? We know that's a thing.
mm,
Like all of that was obvious. But throwing Ukraine to the wolves was not obvious. Whatever it is he's doing in Israel, this has me concerned because what I think is happening is they're being set up and at some point will also be thrown to the wolves. And I'm not quite sure what the point is of what's happening right now. But
mm,
as I mentioned with the Monopoly game, there doesn't really have to be a point. But I think this is an interesting distraction because we have all over the world right now, there are people fighting their own people, their neighbors, and they are wiping out whole communities of people in several countries, Syria,
yeah.
various parts of Africa. There's it, Yemen, it's all over the place, right? But nobody talks about any of those because the people involved are not Jewish. They're focused on Israel because it's Jewish. So this is a millennia long anti Semitism problem that is still here. And it's a thread, and there's a lot of historical and a lot of spiritual stuff going on in that. And that's a podcast on its own, I would say. But I think it's a very, very useful chess piece that's being played with right now. So watching what's happening there, I don't think it's what it looks like. Looks like they're
Well,
getting support. Hold that thought.
yeah. Well, this is part of what I was meaning when I said, watch, be careful who your allies are.
Mm,
Because not everyone
100%.
is giving you support because they want you to succeed. They're giving you support because you're fulfilling their what they want you to do. And when
Yes.
that's done, that support will get pulled.
Yes. And I think that's what's happening there.
Hmm. And it's the what was I gonna say? So I'm gonna put this out there just because it's sitting in my mind right now and it's kind of wants to be out there. So I've said this before. I don't know if I said it on the podcast though, but I've definitely been saying it to people when I have conversations, and I'm pretty sure I've already said this to Michaela. So Trump has been the revealer, the great revealer.
Oh, yes.
Don't have to
Ooh.
agree with him, don't have to like what he's doing, but his behavior is uncovering a bunch of stuff and revealing a bunch of behavior. Like, and I'll use Canada this example, right? They're not wrong. Like, I heard today someone give a very, 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 I'll argue, distasteful explanation of Canada when they were talking about Trump's uh, the tariff tariff war, you
Hmm.
know. But it wasn't completely wrong because the provinces weren't united. But now we're apparently one country. Everyone is on board, which, if you ask me, is still not true because, like, we don't have free trade between our provinces. Now they're talking about putting free trade between the provinces, but I'm like, is that really going to happen?
I think it
Because,
might. No, I think it might because
yeah,
of necessity.
yeah,
And I think that would be a good thing. And Canada needs to work on establishing and strengthening allies, current ones, future
right.
ones. Like a lot needs to happen. But again, all of this isolates the US, which
Mhm.
is not logical at all,
No,
right?
but
Like it doesn't fit any narrative that any of us have seen before.
yeah. Well, it's funny because my sister, yeah, was because I was like I said, all my siblings live beside each other in another town, and we went and celebrated my mother's birthday last weekend, so I was there all week. And apparently, both me and my brother said this to my sister, my older sister. Right now, the United States is in an abusive relationship with its president, and part of a quality of an abusive relationship is that the abuser isolates the abused from all
Yes.
their support. Because a
Yeah.
part of me is like, yes, as a country, Canada should fight back and shouldn't show weakness in the face of aggression. However, that's also part of the plan. The more Canada fights back, the more Canada is being portrayed as a bad ally.
Yes, but in this
Yeah.
particular case, Canada won't be portrayed as anything else.
Right.
So stand your ground and be
Mm.
strong because
Well,
nothing
that's
else
that,
will
and that's
work.
what I've been saying for the last couple of days. It's like I would love for Canada to be able to, as a country, be able to stand up and say, listen, we're not abandoning the American people to one, because they didn't all vote for Trump. Like they didn't all vote that way. So it's almost a shame to leave at least the ones who tried to not go there. But on the other hand, you also can't let you can't let the person walk all over you by the same token. Like Canada can't sit there and lose out, because the economy still has to be preserved and the economy still has to,
I don't think
maintained.
Canada has a choice
Yeah.
in the matter, honestly. Canada
Hmm.
needs to survive and it needs to look after itself and it needs
Well,
allies. And what's going on south of the border,
mm,
you can always open doors later
mm,
should the abusive relationship come to an end.
yes,
But while it is continuing, there is nothing for Canada to do.
that's right. And that's
So,
why I keep telling people in abusive relationships, as long as you're in the abusive relationship, I'm just going to do and prepare for the day you are ready to leave the abusive relationship.
right. And that's basically where we are. That's what's happening. But also there's a lot being stirred up with this situation.
Hmm.
And a lot of rights of human beings are being repealed as though that's something another human being can do. It's
Hmm.
an interesting concept, right? I say you don't have any rights because I don't like the fact that you changed your gender, the one that we assigned you at birth.
Right.
Um, in Iowa right now, this is, I mean, we didn't mean to be political, I don't think, but it is the
No.
very current stage. And Iowa right now have just passed a law that removes rights for trans people, meaning anyone living in Iowa that's trans is can be discriminated against and probably will be, and they have no recourse whatsoever. Now, if they want to leave the country, hopefully they already have a passport because they are also not being given passports
Right.
because your gender has to be the one you were assigned at birth. If you've had gender affirming surgery, then you're shafted. You're not going anywhere. So you're going to be stuck in a place that doesn't want you, but won't let you go. Now, if that's not an abusive relationship, I don't know what is. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that are occurring right now that you really have to wonder who benefits.
Well, yeah, that's a big one, right? Like, there's so many little details we can actually talk about. Like, I'm trying to remember the state, right? I was just listening to people talk at town halls, and I don't remember the name of the state, right? Which state it was, but to vote, your legal name has to match your birth name.
No, that's going to be no. That's going to be nationwide.
That's going to be nationwide?
Oh yeah. No, that affects roughly 69 million women. That is
Well, that's what I was going to
nationwide.
say, right? Because at the town hall, that was one of the things. One woman stood up and said, "Why are you against my right to vote?" And the
Uh-huh.
representative in question was like, "Oh, that's not what we're doing." But yet he wore a smirk on his face
Oh, and
when he said
he
it.
Yeah, and of course, it's exactly what they're doing. Now, that affects roughly 69 million women. And the thing is, if you have a passport, you can use that. But there are more than 69 million people
Mm,
that don't have passports in the US. And if you want to try getting one, well, they've
right.
cut the staff, and you can only have one under certain circumstances, and certain ID doesn't work, and you have
Mm,
to have original documents which a lot of people don't have, and so on and so forth. So it's a case right now of people are being stripped of their humanity in this country. And this is, I'm going to compare it to witch burning
mm,
because that's what's happening now. In effect, we're being burned for being who we are. Human beings are being burned for who they are. They're
yeah.
being stripped of their humanity. And much like the response to those witch burnings, we need to be stronger, more determined,
Mm,
and more focused with what we're doing here because they haven't gotten around to people who practice religions other than Christianity yet, but they will. And in
mm,
fact, South Carolina have started doing this thing where people will go online and join online spaces where pagans and or witches are organizing gatherings, and then they are showing up at those gatherings with placards and lots of noise and what have you,
right.
you're going to hell and yada yada. So it's a witch hunt without the pitchforks right now, but it's only just started. So where that's going to go, who knows? So
Mm,
is the aim to have us all silenced, except for the old white man, the old straight white man, I should say? Then, it behooves the rest of us to be as noisy as hell and not give it up. So
yeah.
I encourage every person listening to this to be strong, to find your foundation. And if you practice magic, make sure you're doing it intentionally, unreservedly, and absolutely go for it. Do it. We need it now.
Yeah. What was I going to add to that? Yes. So first, not as important because it won't matter to you directly, but I think by the time this episode comes out, the new Yuga will have started. So that'll just basically be the same Yuga as the Yuga we're leaving, but this would be the one on the upward descent. But it'll still have all the truths there lies and all that kind of stuff, the same qualities. because we're like in a valley, right? If you're looking at between two peaks, we've
Mhm.
descended, we hit the bottom, now we got to climb back up. So the climb is still going to be difficult, but we're climbing. So there's that. But what I was going to add to it is I, I want people to have their eyes open moving forward. So some of you may have noticed the quality of the campaigning running in this last election in the States. If you were paying attention, you've noticed they really sandbagged Kamala Harris pretty good. The Democrats did sandbagged her. Or, as one person that worded it, the the Democrats would rather have Trump in power than to actually put a candidate in there that could win the popular vote. And then the example was Bernie Sanders. They would rather have Trump in charge than Bernie Sanders. And when you think, like, not that I'm sitting here backing Bernie Sanders, because Bernie Sanders has ultimately ended up siding with the Democrats because he didn't want to pull a Ralph Nader and divide the vote. But he was more popular on Fox News than Trump was when he would go
Interesting.
in and do town halls.
Interesting. Well, he's quite radical,
Yeah,
and yeah, he now you see, being Jewish
yeah,
himself, he also was saying, "Hey, what's happening on the left here?
hmm
Why are you so anti-Semitic?" And he was decrying that, as rightly he should, because frankly, whether you're Jewish or not, it doesn't make sense to be anti-Semitic. For what?
right.
Do you know these people that you hate? There are roughly 15 million Jews in the
Yeah.
entire world. There are more than 2 billion Muslims. How is it that this small, tiny population are the bullies and the colonizers and what have you? Like, really? This doesn't, none of that makes sense. That's another one of those puzzle pieces that you look at and say, well, where does that come from? What is the issue with that? And I have a whole lot of theories on the subject, but just for the listener who may be undecided or maybe has anti-Semitic tendencies themselves, where did those come from and why? And do you really need to hold them? Like, it doesn't make sense. You look silly. Stop
Mm.
it. Stop it. And a lot of the magic that we use comes from Jewish mysticism in the first place, or it can at least be found there. I'm not saying it originates there because it's older than that, but it is found there. So, what are you against again?
Mm.
Uh, hmm.
Yeah, yeah. I guess we'll just sit with that one for a second. Let your things sink in. Let your thoughts at the moment sink in, listeners. And remember, like, so right now, the people you have in power, this is almost going to sound like what is it, a call to arms, but it's not. It's just that the two major parties you have are not looking out for your best interest.
Gosh,
Even the one
no.
that right now is now pretending to lead the resistance, they preferred to have Trump in over someone who would have helped you.
And I think it's even more interwoven than that. Politicians have never actually cared that
Right.
much about the people. They've just hummed the tune really well, you know? And
Yes.
and this is something that I've come to understand recently. I asked for clarity in one of the invocations that I did.
Mm.
And the first clarity that I got was wherever you look, it's the same. People are doing the same thing. It just looks different superficially. So, for example, you have politicians, pick a country and show me one where they're not doing things in order to keep their prestigious job and the money that goes with
Mhm.
it. Show me one that is genuinely putting themselves out for the people unreservedly. Of course they're not. It doesn't work that way. It simply doesn't go that way. And we hold on to this illusion of, but I vote for you, therefore you're supposed to
Right.
XYZ. But that's not how it goes anywhere, not just the US. Nowhere does that happen. So what are you looking at? Corruption is everywhere. It's a human way of being when you
Right.
reach a certain stage and a certain disconnectedness from the spiritual source. When you
Yes.
become fully on earth, right? Like it's all about what you can do here, and you lose your connection, then the danger is that you take things, should we say, too seriously here and like start doing stuff to put yourself ahead when in reality it's a facade. It looks that way, but it isn't. And when you said earlier that Trump is the great revealer, this is exactly what's being revealed.
Mhm.
This is precisely it. They're all messing with you, right? So what do we need to do in the middle of that is focus on yourself and how you're showing up. What are you contributing to? Where is your focus going? Because they're feeding on your negative energy,
Right.
right? When you put all that energy into this is terrible, this is so bad, pull hair out, go out and yell at people. When you're doing that, what are you not doing? Where is your
Yeah.
energy not going? And you cannot be putting it into spiritual improvement or deeper connection or action in the form of magic. You can't be doing that at the same time. You have to center yourself. And being centered and grounded are things that you really, really need to practice on a regular basis, like first thing in the morning, if you can, before you even start your day. And we've mentioned setting intentions, I don't know how many
Mm.
times now, but probably triple figures. And it's crucial at this point to make sure that you know what your intention is, you're clear about it, and you're focused on it. Minimize the distractions. And remember, you're just here for a little while. This isn't forever. You're on this planet for experiences that you signed up for, and you're here to learn and to evolve, to take information from that that's useful and helping to connect you back to source.
Right.
So if you're losing your energy and losing your mind at the people who are doing all the dark things, if you will. It's not shadow work, by the way. They're not doing shadow. They're just doing mud, right?
Mm.
And if you're losing your energy there, well, you're giving it away. Like, why would you do that? So
Yeah.
don't.
And you know what? That's a good segue into what the listeners are here for this season. It was Michaela's turn this time out to cast the spell.
It was
Because what
indeed.
she's saying ties into things that have happened since she cast the spell. So I don't know if you want to share, like you don't have to give them the exact details of the spell, but just the nature of the spell you cast for this episode.
So I began thinking that I was going to be working with Lilith, the Dark Mother, and indeed, she was there, but Hecate, the mother of witches, was there also. And they work very nicely together. They play nicely together.
They do.
Um, but it increases the angle, if you will, the possibilities, the playing field. Like there's more
Mm.
toys in your sandbox, if you will. Um, and so I called on them for opening, opening the circle to allow the energy to flow in certain ways and to the people who are going to work with it in effective ways. And I did my very best to put parameters around this so that we're not gatekeeping, but more safeguarding
Right.
so that the energy is going where it needs to go and not going to people that can't handle it.
Right.
So it's important not to tap into something that you're not prepared for. So treading quickly but cautiously is a good idea, I feel.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, it took time and it took a lot of input, if you will, a lot of focus and a lot of intention. And what I want to give to you from that is whatever you do from this day forward, be very, very precise in your language. Be very clear about what you intend. Because if what you're putting out there is vague, you will get all kinds of mischief in the shadows and it will pull at you to sort of tell you, yeah, but you're not paying attention. You're not doing this precisely enough. So we're going to mess with you, right?
Right.
And
Oh
you
yeah.
don't. Yeah, a lot of the trickster stuff, right? So
Hmm.
you need to be. In this case, the trickster is just to poke you until you realize you're in the wrong place,
Yes.
and you need to go do something differently. So save yourself a lot of hassle, even trauma, the word trauma came to mind, of vagueness. Be very clear and take all the time you need to be clear because once you are, now you can really get rolling. Now you're in the sports
Mm.
car, not a Tesla, but a sports car that's going to
Yeah.
move fast. Um, so, make sure you got the right fuel in it first.
Yes. Make sure your machine is clean, properly attuned, and all ready to go.
You need to be so clear on what you're doing, how you're doing it, who you're working with. And it might not look how you expect. Like if there's one thing to take away from what Danielle and I say, is it's more than likely not what you expect. Whatever it is, it's not that.
Mm.
And we find that over and over again. And I had no idea until yesterday that Hecate was even going to be in there.
Mm.
So, there you go. That was a very delightful surprise.
Right. And it was interesting because I had texted Michaela on Saturday trying to figure out if she had started or not because I was experiencing that Lilith was blocking me from sensing anything. I had described her as acting like a human shield and I couldn't see beyond her, so I had no idea what Michaela was doing because all my awareness was kind of put into one spot and Lilith was like, you're not sensing anything beyond that. So I don't know if something Michaela was doing was going to be something that would be, I don't know how to work it. I don't want to say disruptive to me because that's not really what I was thinking. But like I have certain qualities put to me to do this task that we're now going into. And I don't know if that has certain ramifications magically when it comes
Oh,
to
there's
certain kinds of magic.
ramifications. There's
Hmm?
ramifications, no question. And I was doing a lot of preparation prior,
Right,
which is what I was just saying.
right,
Now for people to take on board for themselves is sometimes it takes a while to do the preparation,
right.
and you got to prepare you first before you
Hmm.
prepare what you're going to do, and be prepared for that to change.
Yes, the
And
converse explanation of my being shielded was so that I didn't interfere
Yeah,
unintentionally.
well be. There was a lot of processing going on and a lot of evolving of how it was going to look. And it even evolved during the process itself.
Right,
So there was a lot. There was a lot going
right.
on. And there
Because
still is. There
yeah,
still is. If you
yeah.
think of a central point, an explosion, if you will, and then there's like shock waves that go out,
Mm,
that's perhaps the sensitive may have felt that yesterday because that was what was triggered.
mm. So yesterday would be for you guys listening a week and a day, but
The ninth,
previously.
the
Yeah,
ninth
because
of
we're about a
March.
week behind now in well, I say behind. We've kind of caught up, obviously, time-wise, because we were talking about what's going on with Trump and tariffs and stuff like that. So we're kind of more like I think we're about a week out by the time you hear this. But yeah, and I think maybe it was a good idea that I didn't because like I think we've mentioned it on the previous episode, is that well, even probably I know this season we've mentioned it, but like I said, it's been a month in between pretty much every episode. So, but So Michaela and I are fairly attuned right now for what we're doing. So it was probably just as well that maybe I was blocked so that Michaela could do her work without my interference.
It's
Because
true.
whereas I may not have intended to, just part out of curiosity and out of wanting Michaela to be okay, I could end up interfering without intending to. So that was probably the case. But it was interesting because Michaela's work did actually have ramifications for me after. And it was
Check
interesting.
and say was likely to happen.
Yeah.
But I also
Well,
put protections on there so that um, it could be significant, but not detrimental.
hmm because after Michaela cast her spell, I ended up working with Lilith and Hecate when it was done. And it was interesting because Michaela gave me some instructions to follow, and I did. And wow. So at, re without revealing everything that they don't want me to reveal, right? I will say like part of my work, and I was talking to Michaela earlier before we did this, and I think I got the wording for what I wanted to say. The results for me were from that spell she cast when I made use of it. So one of my traits, like when I talk about the invisible world, one of my traits is that who I am usually shines, my light, if you will, usually shines. And that's part of what binds people to me when I'm doing my invisible work. So Hecate and Lilith reminded me that one of my, we'll call it deepest wounds, comes from not letting my light shine in a way that was expected. Or I want to say muddying my light, but is that the right word? Because I was being me and I was using my light, but I was using it in a way that wasn't expected and that wasn't perceived as me using my light. And that led to something that kind of stayed with me in a painful way. And so it kind of, one could argue that in part, me not accepting until Michaela came on using the title wizard was derived from that, or was one of the ripple effects of that thing happening. So basically, but the result for me of Michaela's spell was I have to remember to be true to who I am and true to what I can do, what my quote unquote inner light is, my magic is.
Mhm.
So that's my lesson, and probably the lesson that the rest of you should probably take from if you encounter Michaela's work from this the spell she cast. It's hard to sometimes give information when you're limited what you can give, where you got to play that dance of people need to discover stuff and you can't give the store away.
Well, also, if somebody's really, really interested, they can always contact us and
Yes.
then we'll have a better idea because putting out too much information on the
Mm-hmm.
subject in a podcast format is kind of throwing it out there for the wind to take, and it may
Right.
end up in the right place and it may not. And I'm being as careful as I can be for things not to end up in the wrong place.
Right.
It's important. I don't want to add to the destruction that's going on right now. We have, think Shakti. It's destruction in order to create, and
Right.
we have no choice about the destruction that has been in process for a long time. It's
Mm.
just really visible right now, and the destruction is happening all around us. The question is, are you going to be one of the seeds that grows from it? Think forest fires. What happens after a forest fire? The seeds
Mm.
germinate and they grow. Fires are inevitable. Trees will be destroyed one way or another if it's a lightning strike or whatever. This is the cycle. This is what happens. And the negative um, patriarchal energy, and that is
Mm.
a very specific energy. I'm not saying all men. I'm saying this patriarchal need to dominate everything, whether it be females, whether it be
Mm.
the environment, each other. This domination thing is what is ultimately bringing about destruction right now, and tapping into the feminine. energy,
Mm.
the dark mother, which is Lilith, the witch's mother, which is Hecate. You know, there are others. There's Circe, there's all kinds. You know, go for what speaks to you, what calls to you. But men and women can work with these
Mm.
spiritual entities, if you will, goddesses, however you want to term it, whatever your relationship is. But remember, you're working with the whole, not with a part. So typically, I know I got pulled off track here, but I kind of have to go with this.
Right.
Typically, people will say, well, I'm working with the demon aspect of Lilith, or I'm working with the mother goddess, or I'm working with. No, no, no. This is not, you don't take a limb. You work with the whole. So be prepared for that. Whatever you go playing with, know that you can't take one bit and say, I just want to work with that bit. No, you might see that written somewhere. I don't care. It doesn't matter if you do.
Right.
Think about it. If you get into a relationship with somebody, are you in a relationship with one aspect of that person? Or do you see all the facets at some point? And the answer to that is going to be if you're really in a relationship, you will see all the facets. Just
Right.
because you don't see them in the beginning doesn't mean they're not there. And it doesn't mean they're not coming out. So
That's right.
be aware of that, whoever you work with, whatever you
Yes.
work with.
Yes. You know, and I'm glad you brought it up
I
because
totally
it's
got sidetracked then. Like I see a railway with like the
yeah,
switch that puts you on another track, and I literally got whoosh, sided
yeah,
over to that other track then. That was so funny. I saw it happen.
right. And it's important that you said it though, because it's true. Like, I mean, I know in my work, working with spirits, it's that yeah, you may want to work with a spirit for a certain part, one of its aspects, but it's never that way, right? A human being, or well, to use a human
Anything.
being as an example, a human being is never just that one aspect you want from them, right? It's they bring all their experience in and to use all the tools at their disposal if they're going to help you. This works the same way in the spirit world. When you ask a spirit or a spirit who is also acting as a goddess or a god, they will bring all of their aspects to it. So even if you don't like you may like the dark side of Lilith, but you may not like the mother goddess part of her. Well, sometimes the mother goddess part is the one that's going to solve your problem. That aspect is going to be the one that will feed you wisdom. And so you're going to detract from the thing you want and get the thing you need, which will show up from another aspect.
And it's also important to be aware that it's rather disrespectful
Hmm.
to try and work with one part and ignore the rest. You know,
Yeah.
it's like saying, well, I like that my partner is sensitive when it works well for me. And I don't like it when they're sensitive and I have to be careful how I phrase things, right? Like it's two sides of the same coin. And that's just one aspect. So think of that in the spiritual world, and you have got all these different aspects,
Hmm.
and you have the polar opposites in each aspect. So I mentioned Shakti earlier. You've got the creation and the destruction, destruction and then creation. They're two sides of the same thing. It's the same cycle. So if you're looking at one aspect of one side or one facet, then know that the other ones are going to come and slap you up the head because you're
Hmm.
not paying attention and you're approaching in a very transactional way. That's actually important. If you're listening to this, write that down. Do not be transactional in your workings because if you want something from a spirit or a goddess or whatever, however you phrase this, if you want something from them, you better be in a relationship with them first. And that means showing up, right?
Yes.
Oh man, this is important. This is like coming at me from a lot of angles here. You need to show up and pay attention every day. So that means if you're working with Lilith, you better be having conversations on a daily basis. You had better be thanking and paying attention to what Lilith wants from you as well as what you want from Lilith. It's a two-way street. So be prepared for that. You just don't just knock on the door and say, "Hey, give me this," and I'm good to go. Thanks, bye. That's not how that works. It's a complex relationship. So if you're thinking of working with specific spirits, figure out what you're prepared to do and how much you want to interact. How much do you want to learn? And ideally, the answer is as much as possible and all the aspects, please, because you're going to get that. And either you willingly go looking or it'll come slap you up the head.
Yeah. No, that is the exact thing. So this kind of give you a taste of how I've been working with spirits and that I have relationships with them. So that's why I never got into spellcasting because it's like we're buds. What are you talking about? We're compadres, we're amigos. What do you do? What do you need me to do something formal for? Right? But that's kind of what you're saying is that's how I've been working. So it's been like what do you need me to cast spells for now? Aren't we buds? What are you talking about? But that was my view on spells. But you described spell casting when on the first episode of this season. It's about being intentional in your work and it's about, you know, putting yourself into it and being part of it and owning your part of what you're doing. And usually the best way to own the part of what you're doing is to do the formal things as well. Hence, in
Yeah.
this case, casting a spell, therefore doing the evocations, the invocations, using the proper words. If you have to do oaths, doing an oath, if you have to do stuff like that, like because this is the seriousness of putting yourself in there.
Well, a spell is basically focusing your intention into words, which, if you think of the Christian view of how to work with their spirit, you pray. Well, what is praying except a spell, right?
Right.
You're saying specific words, intending certain outcomes, and I know that if you're Catholic, for example, there's a whole load of saints, and
Oh
you
my
pick a
God, yeah.
saint for the thing you need, and you go ask them for it, and in some cases there may be a thing that's required of you to do in order to have that prayer answered. And so Catholics are actually very witchy. They don't realize it, but they got spells going on all over the place. And if you look at the church, right, waving the incense
Mm.
around, hello, is that not the same as using sage to cleanse
Yeah.
and cedar and so on to
Hmm.
cleanse your area? It's the same thing, right? It's exactly the same thing. So Catholics are actually very witchy. I just want to throw that out there. Um, so spells are putting your intention into words, and words have power. If I said to you, "Oh, I'm so impressed by the work you do. I think it's amazing, and I'm so glad that I'm doing this podcast with you.
Mm.
It lights up my day," right? You're going to feel a certain way about that.
Right.
Now, if I said something negative, which I'm not even going to put into the air, but if I said the opposite of that, you would also very much feel that. And,
Right.
and you'd probably contract a little bit as a human being, right? How many people do we know have grown up in abusive environments, one way or another, and spend their lives carrying this sack of crap that is all the things people have ever said to them and that they have believed about themselves? Right? These are words. This is a power of words. You can ruin somebody's life with them, and this is in the mundane. So imagine how powerful it is when you start using that in the spiritual. So for anybody who's like, yeah, why is all this yammer about words?
Mm.
Because that's what we have. Those are our tools in this world. That is the main thing you have. You
Right.
can manifest using words. It's yes, you need action also, but intention is like the secret sauce, and you put that into your words.
Yeah. It's funny. I'm almost tempted to say, go back and listen to season one with these new ears, because now you've heard a few things and now you're starting to see the value of it. Go back, listen to season one. It's like less than 3 hours total of time. So you can go through season one pretty quickly. But yeah, so we are actually on topic
Right.
because our topic was strategies with magic, right? And we're giving
Mhm.
them to you. We're just not forming them like a discussion on strategies. We're just saying here's how you work. But yeah,
Well, that's how it comes to us, though. So we have to
yes,
give it the way it comes, right?
yeah,
One or two people have commented on how our back and forth conversations go, because obviously none of this is actually laid out and planned. We literally go with the flow,
hmm
and every now and then the thread will fly away, or, what happens just happened to me where my railway track got shunted off to
yeah,
another one because it was important that I say those other things. And I'm going to have to listen to this later to find out where I was going before that.
mm
But this is how it shows up for us. And
yeah,
for each person, it will be a little bit different how this works for you. And I do encourage you to find your medium. And by that, I mean, what speaks to you? Is it the cards? Is it water? Is it fire? Like, what speaks to you? Fire and chaos tend to be never far from me. So that
perfect.
is absolutely a thing that I spent years trying to not have, and you can run from it, but it's like running away from your shadow. As soon as you stop, it's still there. Never went anywhere. You just won't wear yourself out, right? So
hmm
whatever it is that speaks to you, just listen, because that's going to be your path, and it can look different. It doesn't have to look like anything anybody else tells you. In fact, why would it? You're not like anything anybody else is.
Right.
We are each, we bring our own flavor to this, and that will show up in your magic.
Yes, absolutely. And remember, right? There's already magics unlocked for this time. So all you got to do if you are one of the recipients of it, as well as the downloads and the synchronicities, is be yourself and love yourself to make sure you're as clear and as I'm going to use this word, but this word has a lot of loaded messages when we're talking about this particular thing is be as pure as you can, but pure in who you are, not pure as in someone else's standard of purity. Think of it as if you're old, I mean millennial and older, old. Before, sometimes video games you had cartridges, and sometimes video games wouldn't play properly if you didn't make sure that the pins that connected with your console, if they weren't clean, so sometimes you had to make sure that was cleaned out, and then your game would work properly. So for those of you who are old enough to remember that particular thing, that's part of being pure is to make sure there's no dust or there's nothing in the way of letting you receive.
Right. And that comes with clarity. You
Right.
need, and that's something that was set into motion yesterday as well. So adding to the revealing, but bringing clarity with it, because the revealing is already happening and I didn't need to do anything with that, but I just added a little, uh, what's the word? A little tag, a little something on there,
Yeah.
which is the clarity, because we need clarity to know what we're doing. So this is also going to be a time of shedding false illusions about yourself.
Mm.
Um, and we all have to do that. It's like it's ego death, right? Small deaths, ego death, where the thing you've always believed about yourself, you now know isn't necessarily accurate. And an example that I can give you for that is we often say, oh, let's go with anti-Semitism, because I mentioned that
Right.
earlier. So many people prior to October 7, 23, so many people would say, oh, if I was in Germany during, 1939, I would have helped the Jews. I would never have taken part in
Yeah.
that. I would have done this, this, this. Well, we now know that that's not true for a great many people. So, what does that say about you? And what do you have to re-understand about yourself? And one of the things I want to say, and this is without judgment, I'm not judging people I can't even see, for goodness sakes. But one of the things is we assume things about ourselves that we don't know. Until they're tested, you don't know. How would you respond if somebody was choking in front of you in a restaurant? Would you run up and do the Heimlich maneuver? Would you phone 911 or whatever the number is in your location? Would you run out the restaurant screaming? Would you pretend you didn't notice? You don't know because you haven't been there yet.
That's right.
And that's something to be aware of, that these illusions you have about yourself, and we always act very nobly in our illusions, right? We really do. We always do the pristine thing, but that might not be true. That might not be how your life experience has shaped you. And that's okay. Just know that it's there. We'll know that that's possible. We all have flaws. We all have things that are less than stellar. And that's fine. That's kind of the human condition. So it's not a judgment thing, it's just an awareness thing. You might not be as amazing as you think you are. So the purity is more
Mhm.
one of knowing rather than
Well,
be
clarity, I think, was a good word.
clarity, absolutely. Yeah. You need to be aware that there's a lot of illusion happening and don't buy into it. Like it's not real. Don't buy into it.
Yeah. Well, and I was going to say, because quite some time ago, I kind of ended up doing this exercise that Michaela is telling you to do, where it's like, really, how would you behave? And for the most part, I just kind of started doing I'll default to I probably won't do what I think I'm going to do. I probably won't be the noble hero I think I'm going to be, and
Right.
then go from there.
And that's true of all of us.
Yeah.
It really is. And you might really want to be that person, but maybe you're just not.
Yeah. But then, in admitting that to yourself, you might actually open yourself up to being more the hero than you thought you were.
Maybe. Because if you are clear about that, then maybe you'll figure out why you wouldn't do the thing that you'd like to do. Why wouldn't you be that person? Would you be afraid? I'm sure there are so many people in the current political situations, for example, who say, I would never do that. I would never tolerate that. And here they are doing it. And then, people who have done something and regret it will often, rather than admit that they have this regret to themselves, let alone to anyone
Right.
else, they will just cover it up and make excuses for it. And then, of course, the next thing is you blame everybody else. You push off self responsibility onto other people. And therein goes your energy, whoosh, away from you and into all the negative space. And you're feeding that thing. You're feeding the negative monster by doing that. So clarity is the antidote.
Yes. It's funny, right? Like I don't want to completely modify my own vocabulary for talking on this podcast, but recognizing that certain words have certain connotations is still important.
Power.
Yeah. Yeah, because when I chose the word purity, right, I'm thinking like the minute I said it, I'm like, ugh, now there's all these loaded things like, people wearing purity rings. People aren't good enough because they're not pure of one thing or another, right? Which someone who's mixed like I am should be very well aware of using that word that way.
Interesting. You see that's the thing with how you define the word too,
Yeah,
because it wouldn't have occurred to me to put that meaning to it, because we're all a blend of a whole heap of things.
right.
Some more obvious than others, yes, but it wouldn't occur to me to put those two things together. And someone else is going to be, well, do you pray every day? Okay, therefore you fit the bill. How many people go to church on Sunday who consider themselves to be going to heaven and all the,
Mm.
all the good things, and yet they behave like utter bastards for the rest of the week?
Yeah,
Like how many people are like that? I was in Southern Ireland many, many moons ago. It rained the whole damn time. But anyway,
right.
um, what I found on Sunday the churches, every day of the week, the churches and the pubs are next to each other, right? And on
Mm,
Sunday, everybody goes to church and then they all come out of the church and go straight to the pub next door. Well, I'm not saying that's impure or bad or anything, but is it actually, do they go together really? And in practicality, yeah, they do because they do it every Sunday and they have done for a very, very long time.
right,
So that is how socially life goes. But is that what you get from going to church on Sunday? It seems not to me. Um,
yeah,
but that's my interpretation, right? Ask somebody from Southern Ireland, and they'd probably look at you like you're nuts and say, well, of course it is. Right? Because that's their expectation and it's what they do. Point being, purity is, in fact, one of those words that does carry a judgment with it and it gets
right.
placed. It can be used like a weapon, actually, um, particularly to somebody who looks for external validation. You can kind
Yeah.
of beat them up with the word purity. Clarity, however, yeah, let's go with clarity because there
Mm,
really is no judgment on that. You're just clear about what you're doing, where you're going, and as the illusions fall away, you get a little more clarity about what's behind that. And bear in mind, it could be another illusion. It's not like
yes.
we have one layer and we're good to go. No, life is full of layers. And every time you learn a thing, you get another one to learn coming up, you know?
Yes. And you know what? I'm going to bring up human design.
Absolutely.
So not only do you have your layers, but you have who you are when you interact with others,
Oh, 100%.
because
Yes.
then your gates complement each other or complete each other, right? Something like that.
You have all kinds of things shifting, yes. So
Yeah.
your how your design shows up changes depending on who you're with. Yes, it
So,
does. And it's it's fascinating to learn how that works for different people too. But right now, I'm working on a book that is human design
mm,
with Lilith. I don't believe there's another book out there with this. It doesn't matter if there is. Actually, I'd be kind of curious to see it if there was. But and I may yet bring more into it than Lilith, but this is human design and what the forces I'm working with anyway
mm,
want you to do with that. How to reclaim, like Lilith is all about reclaiming your place. That is what she has had to do. And she is here for everybody else who has to do that, which is all of us. So,
yeah.
yay, yay, Lilith. And Hecate brings a whole new flavor to it. I
Mm,
do not yet have Hecate involved in this book, but I may. It's
mm,
possible. Um, it's going to end up being a series rather than one book if I do that because it's
yeah.
already around 300 and something pages.
No,
So it's already going to be big. But the point being, your human design it's like a river that's moving. It doesn't, you're not, this is your one way and that's it. There are layers. And whenever you move something, there's another layer, and you move that, and there's another layer. I mean, we're complex creatures. What would be the point of having all this detail involved in life on this planet if you were just going to be like one layer deep?
yeah.
How
It's true.
boring.
Yeah. It's funny. So I know at least part of this thing I'm going to say next is me, and it is repeating something we kind of already started saying. If there's other influences, I'm not completely sure yet. But I do kind of want to get back to respect what you're working with. Like I've said it before on Reddit, I'm a part of a bunch of groups of people using spells. I'm actually even part of the Hecate subreddit.
Are you? I didn't
Yeah.
know.
Actually, while we were talking, I actually got a notification. Someone had posted in it.
Oh, interesting.
But my interpretation, if you will, to a lot of people posting is that they're not being as respectful as they can be. Some people are, and some people are giving lip service to being respectful.
That one's dangerous.
But when I look at what they're trying to accomplish, I'm like, that, is not you being respectful. That is you basically going, give me, give me, give me.
Yeah, and that doesn't go well. You will learn your lesson if you go in looking for gimme gimme. Because, just think of your own mother. If
Hmm.
you went to your own mother and said, "Give me this, give me that, give me the other," would she not cuff you around the ear at some point and say,
Yeah.
"Excuse me, where are your manners?" Or do you mind? What's going on here? Like there would need to be some reciprocation, and that's your own mother. So if you're
Hmm.
tapping into something you haven't been knowingly connected to before, you better be establishing some points of connection there.
Right.
Be respectful, and lip service is especially damning.
Hmm.
And that word just kind of popped up. But it is especially damning because you're pretending, you're lying. Don't lie.
Yeah.
Don't lie in your magic word. And oh boy, that is so serious. Don't lie.
Yeah. Well, but you say damning, and that's kind of appropriate because one of the reasons that I started the podcast and one of the reasons why I do what I do in the first place is because we're entering a period of time where what we do has an effect on the spirit world. Like
Yeah.
we now have enough power even in the material world to cause ripples in the spiritual ether, in the spirit world, to now cause difficulties for spirits. And they're tr now want to help us get our own balance back so that they can have their peace and their harmony in their part. And so, because we're doing this as allies and we're both getting something out of it, and there's a lesson here for people in politics and for people following the politics, and you think these big shows of brute force are everything that's important. Right now in the spirit world, we're doing this. We are trying to achieve a harmony so that we both benefit. And so you kind of have to bring that into your practices. So while you're asking for help, is what you're asking for also helpful in return? Your best spells and your most effective spells are going to be ones that aid both ways.
Right. I like that. Is it helpful in return? That's very important. I mean, it's a two-way street, right? It's a
Mhm.
relationship. It's not something that you just go and say, "Hey, I want this, give me that," and off you go. Even manifesting is not, which is a very powerful thing to do. Excuse me. But every action, there is an opposite and equal reaction. I mean, that's a law that we understand on this planet, but
Right.
it's a thing everywhere, right? And if you're manifesting, well, there's going to be shifts and repercussions and what have you around that. So you better be sure you want what you're manifesting. So, for example, we've had mentioned something similar before when we talk about people using love spells.
Hmm.
Be careful what you wish for, you might get it. It might
Yeah.
not look the way you think it does. Again, part of that would be that you're being vague about what you're asking for. And part of that is maybe you're overstepping what you're asking for. What is your motivation for asking that? Are you trying to take away somebody else's free will? And now it's really important to consider that because what's happening on the ground, the whole brute force thing, is all about taking away people's free will, all of it.
Hmm.
So that's, newsflash is that's what's not to do. And in history, brute force often wins for a short period of time, and then it doesn't. It never lasts. So if you want to side yourself there, be prepared to have a whole lot of work to do in a future lifetime to recover to the point you're at now. Maybe don't do that to yourself. Be very conscious of what you're doing
Right.
and don't lie.
It's
That's
fun. Yeah.
there's no, oh well, I really believed it. Like that doesn't get you a free pass.
No,
He's the newsflash. There's no free pass. Doesn't go that way.
no. Your actions always matter.
They do. Nicely said.
Mm.
Uh-huh.
Your actions have
But
repercussions, so and you're going to make mistakes, so you might as well have your intentions to be as clear as possible.
right, because whatever's receiving what you're doing it will know your intentions. It will read that, and that will help a lot. Will it cover up for everything that happened because of your vagueness? Not necessarily, but it will mitigate somewhat.
Hmm. That made me think some people might recognize this, but to quote from a movie, Klaatu Veratu Nikto. So if anyone's ever seen Army of Darkness, when Nash goes to cast the spell from the Necronomicon to get himself back home, he couldn't remember all the words.
Right,
So he said the first two words and then he kind of just fudged the third word. And that's of course what brought all the problems back into the story. But
right.
also just trivia wise, Klaatu Barada Nikto, I think comes from the day the earth stood still. It's the greeting I think that the aliens use.
I do not recall.
Yeah, it's not the Keanu Reeves and Will Smith's kid there, Jaden. Not that
Uh-huh.
version, but the older one.
Okay. I'll have
Although
to
I don't know
take
if
your
it's
word
in
for
new. I don't know
this.
if it's in that one either. But anyway,
I'll have to take your word for it. I
yeah,
don't.
it just made me think of it because when he casts that spell, he's vague because he doesn't say the word, and that causes all kinds of trouble. It brings I think the Deadites is what they're called in that particular story. So it brings back all these demons and undead and stuff like that because he
You
didn't do
know,
the spell right.
I've just thought of a really funny example in language, and I'm not going to say the words in Spanish
Right.
because I may mess them up even worse than I'm about to mess up the translations. But the word for chicken in Spanish is very, very close to the word for penis. And if you slightly mispronounce it in
Hmm.
a butcher's shop, they're going to understand. Or in a restaurant, they are
Nice.
going to understand that you mean the other thing. But the point is, that's not what you said.
You know,
So you might want to be clear before you go asking for
and your
chicken.
El Pollo will be loco.
That's the one.
Close to the restaurant, right? El Pollo Loco.
That's yeah, but you have to be careful how you say it because a
Yeah.
slight mispronunciation and you went somewhere else entirely.
Yeah. My Spanish is not amazing, so
Oh, well, mine's less so, which is
mm,
why I didn't want to attempt it. But I've
yeah.
heard this story from more than one person.
Mm,
The point is just, words. You use them the right way, and you maybe get your chicken from the butcher. And if you use them the wrong way, who
mm.
knows what you get, but it might not be what you were asking for.
Yeah. Well, I do mark these episodes as explicit, so we could make jokes about this.
Yeah, well, I kind of already said a couple of words that would put
Yeah.
it explicit, so
Yeah. I was just kind of thinking about what we had said. Yeah, this is an episode about giving people hints and tips, and then the spirit world is giving their hints and tips. And that's why it's going this way. It's not us
absolutely.
giving them,
Uh-huh. Well,
that's
that's
just
how it rolls.
telling what we were told to tell.
Yeah. Well, it's also sometimes I think we end up saying things in different ways because somebody needs to hear it that way in order for
Right.
it to land, right? Um, One of the stories from the Buddha that I may have said on a previous podcast, because it's valid so
Mm.
often, is the Buddha was followed from one village to the
Yeah.
next by this person who said, "Well, wait a minute. When you were at that other village, you said these things, and now you're at this village, you're saying the opposite. Who are you lying to? Like, how can you say this? What do we believe?" And the Buddha said, "Well, those people needed to hear this thing this way. These people need to hear that thing that way." And you have a similar situation actually in the New Testament. Don't ask me which book. I
Right.
studied religion at one point, so I know that it's there. But there are places where Jesus says, love your neighbor, and the next one is eye for an eye. That's not exactly true. I'm mixing Old and New Testament there, I
Right.
know. But the point is, you've got one thing being said, and a few pages later, you've got the opposite. Which is true? Well, they both are for the people who need to hear it.
Yes.
And that's an important distinction, I think, so that people don't get too bogged down on it has to be this way or else. It's that truth or it's wrong. There are many truths. It just depends on which you need. And there are many ways to receive a message. And sometimes you can hear something 10 times. And the 11th time you hear it, you're like, oh, I see. I got it. And you're like, dude, I've been telling you for how long now? Like what? Where have you
Yeah.
been? But it's because you weren't ready yet for it to land, or there was a little piece missing and you needed that thing. And we all have that all the time. So I think that's why things come out in different ways when we're talking,
Yes.
is to reach the people who are listening. And I don't know what I'm going to say till I say it. So, good luck.
Yeah. I'm going to throw something in. Part of this is for my amusement, but now it seems to need to be a thing that needs to be said. So, because we brought up Catholicism and we're talking about relationships between spirits and humans. So, the Pope is God's representative on earth. By that same token, and Michaela's frozen on my screen, but so is that me or is it Michaela? Uh, no, I'm good. So, being that he's the representative on earth, he's also, therefore, God's link to humanity. So, relationships aren't top up and or top or aren't top down or down up. They're shared equally. In this case, because the representative works for both. But yeah, for those of you who are listening, Michaela's just making her way back into the episode. I lost her there for a second, or for a minute, or 30 seconds, whatever. It's interesting to watch her because she's speaking, but I can't hear anything she's saying.
That was so funny. All
Yeah.
sorts of things happened at that time. A cat that I didn't know was in here appeared and kind of let me
Oh
know
yeah.
he was here. And he's been here the whole time because I have the door closed. And the internet went down, and I don't know what else.
Mm.
And it was all when you mentioned Catholicism.
Yeah. I was just talking about the relation, because I wanted to say the relationship's not top down from the spirit world, and it's not bottom up either. And I kind of use the Pope as an example because the Pope is God's voice on earth, but that conversely makes him also the voice of humanity to God because he would pay attention to the Pope first before anyone else because that's the guy he sent down to that's the guy he relies on. So it's just kind of to bring up, the relationship now to me, that's the message of the episode. It's the relationship. It's build your relationship. And it's not that the spirits are telling you what to do and you have nothing to say about it or anything like that. It's reciprocal.
Right. And something that just came very strongly for me was you do not need an intermediary.
No.
You can choose one, but I'm searching for a reason why that would be a good idea and I'm not finding one. You're putting a barrier between yourself and that you'd like to be connected to. So no,
Yeah.
I'm not. I mean, if it works for you, okay, but I'm not coming up with any reason to do that. So you do not need an intermediary. We're often
Yeah.
taught we do, and it suits the people who teach you that.
Hmm. I was gonna say maybe at best you need a translator, like if you were two people were talking and they'd have a language barrier. But
Yeah,
really in the spirit world, it's not that. The
not
only
if you're
reason
listening to
why
this podcast.
no.
If you're
At
still
best, the
listening
only
to
reason you
us,
would go ahead.
you don't need a translator.
No. I would think at best, while you're beginning your journey, you may not have the clarity to listen or to receive the information. And at that point, you have a facilitator to get you on board to where you can hear.
I think
We
it
had said about gatekeepers, right? It's not
might.
gatekeepers, it's someone to hold the place for you until you understand.
Or have the confidence.
Yes.
It may be a matter of confidence.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you don't actually have to have an intermediary, and I think that's uh it's kind of good to know, right? And it
Yeah.
also means it takes away that layer of protection that you think you have, but it's an illusion, right? You are, in fact, responsible for your actions. You are responsible for what you put out there. And no intermediary is going to intercede for you
Right.
and make all that go away. So that whole, say 10 Hail Marys and
Mm.
uh, I don't know what else goes along with that now. I can't remember. But none of that actually does it. The idea with that whole Hail Mary thing is you're supposed to go away, do your penance, and then not do the thing again,
Hmm.
which people will typically not get to the second part of that. They might do the Hail Marys and then they go straight back
Right.
and do it all again. That doesn't work. It's not, it doesn't cover your ass. Nope, you are responsible for what you do, for how you show up, and that it shouldn't be such a terrible thing. Like it's a lot, but get used to it because that is as close to reality as you can get. Is you are responsible for what you do.
Right. Also, I want to add this.
Okay, we
So,
have the pointy finger at this point, so this is coming up as important.
yeah. So Hecate says, "Welcome to the primordial magic."
Aha. See?
So for everyone listening, because and I understand what she's saying. What she's saying is, and I already knew this. This is how magic has been since the beginning, is between you and the spirits you work with.
Right.
And this is where you'll find where a lot of people, okay, this is probably going to be a big secret to some people. This is why you have, once people leave religion and go into spiritual practices like this, why they have such a hard time with the religion, why there's almost a prejudice against religion. Because you're going from, we have this one or two handful of things that everyone has to listen to and venerate and stuff and do what they say, and by extension, do what we say because we speak for them, to realizing your connection is direct. And so you'll get a lot of pushback, you'll get a lot of anger from people against the religions they came from
Hmm?
because of it.
Absolutely. Well, you've been manipulated. Your strings have been pulled. You've been used like a puppet, essentially, with the best of intentions sometimes, and many times not. And to realize that is to send you fully the other way, right? Now you hate what you were once part of.
Hmm.
But again, it's like a pendulum swing.
Right.
Somewhere in the middle is where you want to be. The Buddha wasn't messing around when he was talking about the middle path. You
Right.
want the middle. Neither extreme is good. So, do you need to rail against all religion? No. I mean, it works for some people and it works for many people. And you know, it holds others back. Like there's two sides to that coin as well. Um, Yeah, you don't have to be bothered by it one way or the other once you leave it. Don't worry about it. Let it go.
Right.
Think of the baggage that you carry from your earlier life, right? Whether that's abusive childhood, whether that's a religion thing, or, some horrible teacher did this thing, or whatever it is, right? How long do you want to carry that for? Wouldn't it be nice to just put down that heavy sack and then move forward without it?
Right.
So tempting to go into the whole I hate all religion thing, but really, again, it's another one of those little gaps where you shove all your energy and it feeds the negative monsters. Don't do it.
Right. And you know what? This brings me to something else. And this is a result of the work that Michaela did. So, God, this ties in so good. So, one of my issues is, like I said in the first episode of this season, we're doing some of this magic is going to be of the variety of scales and feathers. Scales being dragons, feathers being angels. one of my hangups is I don't like saying I work with angels because of the connotation of people will tie it in to Christianity. Angel, like, but the thing is, I have no issues saying I work with dragons because I'm not sitting here thinking, you know what? Everyone is going to start worshiping the Jade Emperor because I work with dragons.
Right.
And it's the same thing. Angels aren't really tied to a religion, that they're brought into a religion, just like dragons are brought into religion. Doesn't mean they are. They're still their own entities. They still do their own thing. Whether or not we've brought them into certain narratives doesn't mean they're not independent. And so part of the thing that I did have to deal with is the fact that I had to work with the angels, especially the one that is part of the feathers and scales magic. I have to get rid of that hang up.
And here's another thing. Remember, angels are
Mm.
both light and dark.
Yeah.
Angels are
Oh,
not
absolutely.
angels are not all white robes and
Mm.
white feathery wings. Not at all.
Right.
They come in all kinds of shapes and sizes and representations. And some are flawed.
Yes.
That's again, it's a myth that you're sold very early on, is that the
Mm.
angels are absolutely better than anything, and whatever they say goes. Well, maybe, maybe not. I'm gonna
Yeah.
say probably assume not, and you'll be in
Mm.
good fettle. Lucifer is an angel. I'll just
Yeah.
put that one out there.
But
Uh,
it's funny, right? Because when you and I did the first spell, you were tied to the dragon energy, and I
mhm.
was tied to the angel energy. So, which you could read to mean that Michaela is more tied to dragons and I'm more tied to angels. And so you can imagine where my magic might suffer if I have that hang up. If I'm more attuned to angels than I am to dragons and I'm working with angels.
Right.
My not wanting to give credence to religion because I'm working with something that's very tied to religion in the culture we're in is going to hamper my magic. And that's one of the things I have to get rid of to do the next spell.
And also, demons.
Hmm.
Um, I often hear people say things like, "Oh, I'm wrestling with my demons. I'm fighting my demons." Da da da. Would you stop? Like, make friends with them. It's
Hmm.
part of the whole. And I think that's a theme for today as well, is you can't take pieces and parts. If you want the light, you have to have the shadow.
Yes.
And the shadow is there. It will be there. And you got to turn around and face it and work with it and get to know it. Make it your friend. And it's the same thing. Don't fight your demons. Make them your best buddies. Like, go for a coffee. But seriously, this is not, we are always told, go for the light, go for the good
Hmm.
things, and push away anything that's dark. Well, how's that working for you? Because I'm going to say it isn't. Pretty much it, because we have this duality. You don't have daylight without night. And
Right.
you don't have night without daylight following it. Even in those far northern countries where they lose sunlight for however long, they're still not in complete blackness.
Yeah.
And it will eventually follow. They're just on a different timetable, right?
Yes.
But you can't have the one without the other. So if you try to not have the shadow side or the dark side, then it's like cutting your arms off so that you can keep your legs. You
Yeah.
kind of need them both.
Hmm.
So don't
That's
fight,
actually a whole other analogy to work with. But yeah,
right?
I
It's
wanted
it's
to add
something
in,
that's quite significant though, right? You can just imagine, well, I need my legs, therefore I'll cut off my
yeah.
arms. But would you though? Why?
I don't know if I'd mentioned this on the podcast, but I've discussed this recently with someone, and it's something I thought about years ago. It's the if someone gets their foot cut off or someone gets their leg cut off above the knee, who's suffering more? Who has the worst issue, right? Well, both need prosthetics, both can't walk normally, so both are still screwed regardless of one if one lost more mass than the other.
or both have plenty to work with and overcome, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's shades of the same thing.
Mm,
So, this idea, this notion of, well, demons are bad, angels are good, and this is bad and that's good, and I'll do this and I won't do that, and I'll speak to this aspect of this goddess, but not
mm,
that. No, no, it's all there. It's a whole package. So get used to that idea. And you're a whole package. Like you have
right.
your dark side, you have your light side, and you have your moments in between. And that's what we do. That's just nature. So anybody that's making you feel wrong for that,
Right.
you need your human design.
Yeah.
You really do
Well,
need to get in touch with that. That'll tell you much better than I can in a general sense, just where those strengths are.
yeah.
And they come in different colors.
Yeah. But expanding on what you said, right? Again, with the idea of this being a fair and equal relationship, you're expecting the spirit to work with all of you,
Right? Exactly.
flaws and all. So why shouldn't you work with the spirit, flaws and all?
Exactly. And boy, how often do we look at what we're getting and not what we're giving? Right?
And it
You want,
also reminds again, once again, primordial magic, welcome to it.
right. Because any relationship you're in, you got to take all the things that are coming your way. It's not all sunshine and roses all the time. And frankly, it'd be boring if it was.
Yeah.
It's just not how it works. But somehow it seems very important to keep pointing this out because we are told typically from early, this is good, that's bad. Good versus evil. Do this, don't do that. Everything is separated. We are intentionally separated from the whole right from birth.
Hmm.
We're being told by well-meaning adults quite often, this is good, that's bad, don't do this, do that. And they separate everything out. Whereas, what does the picture look like if you look at the whole? And that's really what we're here to do now. You have to look at the whole because the shadow side, the dark mud, let's go to Spider-Man and Venom for a minute. We've got
Yes.
Venom running amok around the world right now.
Hmm.
So get used to the fact that it exists because it does. And it's
Yeah.
there. And you need to understand that, not run away from it, but stand your ground.
Right. And through not dealing with your shadow side, that's where you're vulnerable.
It is, and that's where the fears come in because you don't know what you don't know because you haven't
Right.
worked with it, right? Like you got to look at that shadow side, run to it, not away from it. Get to know your demons.
Yes. But on a different note, right? I was listening to a linguist once, and basically he said the word demon is essentially interchangeable with the word fairy, as in it just means supernatural creature.
Right. But we have imbued it with all kinds of negative energy, right?
Right.
Power of words.
Yeah. And if you look at the Greek, daemon, that's basically like a guardian angel.
So again,
Yeah.
there's lots of weaving that
Yeah.
we
Well,
get
it's funny.
stories told to us.
Yeah. In the early days of people like mass jumping on the internet and discussing things, I had this discussion and someone said to me, well, if there's a demon, I'm going, well, hold on a second. Now, demon, the word means this. Like that's its actual meaning. And the person said, well, no, that doesn't matter. I'm like, oh, I think it does, especially in this conversation because we were talking about theology. And I says, if someone is already changing the definition of a word to suit their purposes, how do I know they didn't do it for the rest of the conversation?
And of course they are. It's exactly what they're doing. So, yeah, your point was extremely valid and still is because, we use words powerfully and people will change meanings to subdue and rule and manipulate.
Yeah, because that
Look at
person's uh, point was whether or not the word demon is the appropriate word. We're talking about evil spirits, but I'm like, no, 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 no. Because how do we know those spirits are evil? Because the people who
right.
changed the word. which didn't mean that to mean that. What does that mean now about the characterization? How can I even trust the characterization?
And then I'm also
Yeah.
interested to know, well, okay, if you're talking evil spirits,
Mm,
what does that mean?
right.
What's your definition there? Because we all think we know what the definition is, but do we? I'll bet my definition would be different to the next
Mm,
person's. So, what does that mean? I saw a psychologist's
mm,
view of what is evil the other day, talking about Mr. Musk,
hmm
and it was most pertinent. The psychologist said, I can't remember the name, but the psychologist said what he had come to conclude was that evil is a complete absence of empathy. And I would say a complete absence of empathy allows very, very bad things to happen because
Yes.
there is no filter or block on those behaviors. So, in that evil is a thing, that would be a pretty good descriptive as far as I'm concerned. But evil isn't necessarily agreed upon by everybody that looks at it.
No.
So, unless everybody would agree on a thing, I'm going to say the definition is malleable. It's not necessarily true for everybody.
Right.
Like I said earlier, there are different truths. And if you're Elon Musk's mother, you probably would completely disagree that he is an evil person.
Mm,
And if you're somebody who just got fired by him, then I'm going to say 100% you go with that definition, right? Depends on your perspective. Pretty wild thing to say, but
right.
it's true. It's at least true as far as I know, is that this depends on your perspective. I mean, look at politics right now, and we've said this before. Talk to the right and they think the
Mhm.
left absolutely nuts and they're all kinds of terrible things and they blame them for everything. My God, they blame them for things that they weren't there for, right?
Mhm.
And if you talk to the left, they will do similarly to the right. It's in the eye of the beholder. So,
Yeah.
uh-huh.
Well, because what was it? I was reminded of it amusingly watching an episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation, where the Ferengi, I can't remember the name of the thing because I'm not enough of a nerd to remember all the details, but the Ferengi called it, whatever the name of the place was, Massacre, right? And they came after Picard because he was the commander at the time of Starfleet's ships at the time. And so they come on board the Enterprise to try to kill Picard in revenge. And when they finally the confrontation happens, Picard's like, "What are you coming after me for?" And he's like, "Well, because of this massacre." And he's like, "You mean the scrimmage?" So the Ferengi viewed it as a massacre, but Starfleet just viewed it as a scrimmage, like a minor battle that happened.
Ah, yeah, interesting.
So, but like even in real life, right? Like some things you as one country might think the thing you did was no big deal, but to another country it was devastating. And you're never seeing it that way. Or, people's narratives, right? Like when we were talking on, I'm sure it was the last episode, but we were talking about parents and the things they do, right? And the child might come back to you in the future and go, "Well, you did this when I was, so and so." And as the parent, you might go, not even remembering it because to you it was so insignificant, but to the child, it basically, altered their world, probably changed all their view on things. And to you,
Right.
it was nothing.
And sometimes you can remember the event, but you see it really,
Right.
really differently. And because you have an adult perspective and they have a
Yes.
child perspective. So who's to say who's right? They both are.
Yeah. And
And
it's funny,
neither are
right?
complete. They're both right, but neither are complete.
Yes. And that's, because when you use the term, different truths, and it's not even necessarily that you have different truths, but you have an incomplete truth.
Also, both, right? Sometimes what
Mm.
you perceive to be a complete truth,
Right.
it may be either incomplete or it's simply what works for you. It's your truth. but
Right.
somebody else sees it differently. Many moons ago, I went to Bangladesh, and when
Hmm.
I got there, um, I realized a whole bunch of things. Now, I was quite young at the time, and I got there with a whole set of ideas about morals, ethics, how things work, what's right, what's wrong. I had all these wonderful ideas, this little notebook full of how everything's supposed to work. And when I got there, I discovered that that's not how it goes there. That's
Right.
not what they do there. And I learned an awful lot while I was in that country. 3 years of massive learning, huge learning curve. And a big part of what I learned was just because I grew up with this understanding and this is what my group think is correct, doesn't mean everybody else sees it that way. In fact, they really, really don't. And it's very helpful to realize that, you're talking out your backside if you're going around telling people that you have the right view and they're wrong. So
Right.
when you look at things like communism versus democracy, okay, depends on who you talk to. Personally, I think communism is absolutely brilliant on paper.
Hmm.
It really is. It makes so much sense. The problem is you apply it to people who don't make sense. So it
Right.
doesn't work ultimately unless people arrive at it in a non-ideological way. So, for example, a kibbutz looks kind of communist in the way everybody's
Hmm.
working for the collective and so on and so forth. But the motivation behind it is different. And so the outcome is different. The setup is different and it's smaller. It's not massive across, thousands and thousands of miles or whatever.
Right.
So kind of the ideas that come from it are similar, but
Hmm.
the approach is different. All that to say, does that mean it's a wrong approach? No, it's great in this setting. It's not so great in that setting.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Like I always say, like you have the system you need for the time, or sometimes something in that nature, right? Because capitalism may work at one point, and then communism might be the thing we need to do next, just depending. I'm not saying next thing is communism, but what I'm saying is sometimes you have to take a system works at one point, but doesn't work for the next for for the next
Nothing
thing that's
works
coming.
forever.
Right.
Nothing works forever.
Exactly.
Just like I said earlier, bullies and thugs can take over for a while, but they're not going to stay there forever. Nothing lasts like that. The world has cycles, people have
Right.
cycles, everything changes. And that's like the one true constant is that nothing is. Nothing's true, nothing's constant. It's always changing. So,
The only constant is
somehow,
that nothing's constant.
yeah. And that I
Yeah.
think needs to somehow fit into the magic workings of people. I don't know why. I just know that I'm getting this
Well, I'll share
impermanence,
this. I'll
this
share this.
impermanence coming from Buddhism again. This
Hmm.
impermanence needs to be
Right.
understood.
Yeah. Well, even like with magic, right? Like, so in my whole elemental thing, and Michaela can see the symbols here in
Mhm.
the back. But like, so my older sister, and I said this before, her most connected element is Earth. But she went through a period where she could not stand Earth. She couldn't work with Earth. She couldn't do anything with it because Earth was too much of a reminder of the pressures in the material world for her.
Hmm.
And so she was working with fire and air after that, the more ephemeral of the elements. Earth and water were off limits because they were too material world, too solid for her. She needed something that was less pressure, was malleable, was movable. So she didn't touch the elements that she was most tuned to. So yeah, even in your own, even when you find something you want to work with, you know, that may not be something you work with all the time. You might need to take a break from it and move to something else because those things may not help you with the problem you're having or whatever it is you're trying to accomplish.
Or you may need to offload some baggage so that you
Yeah.
can work with it.
Right. Yes.
Sometimes something's in your way. It doesn't mean that you can't access it. It means you got a little work to do before you get there,
Right.
whatever that looks like.
Yep.
So the main thing to take away, I think, from now 2 hour conversation
Mm.
nearly
Oh yeah.
is yeah, we've been going a while. But the main thing to take away is that it's all about showing up fully as yourself in
Mm.
relationship, prepared to be who you are and to receive the same.
Mm.
You have to receive the whole of whatever you're working with and without judgment, right? Leave judgment aside. One of my favorite things to say is be curious, because when you bring curiosity to the table, you cannot be judgmental at the same time. You can't say, hey, I wonder what this is, and judge it at the same time.
Right.
Those two things are, in applied behavior analysis, you say that they are mutually incompatible. So that's a great way of stopping yourself from going the judgmental route, which you may well have been taught as a kid. Uh,
Right.
don't do it. It gets in the way. It's a distraction.
Mm. You know what?
Tell me do.
I think this is the end of the episode. And just a quick reminder, people, I'm not going to outright declare an assignment because I think everything we've talked about at this point, you're giving yourself your own assignments on this one. We've just basically hit you. We've not hit you. I was just thinking hitting the head, the nail on the head. But we've given you, you've basically Hecate has given you guys stuff to do in her discussions in the podcast, in the stuff she said in the podcast, or that, we talked about in the podcast. I think that's very much the assignments should be evident. So if you have to listen to this episode a couple times, give her.
Sure.
And remember, the takeaway is that I think you should, I'll throw out a takeaway. Do what you want, right? Because you be you. That's the point. But think about your relationships. It's no longer about isolating yourself in small groups or, you know, be true to yourself so that you can open yourself up to everything. I'll stick with that wording.
It's a full experience.
Yeah.
You
But
know,
isolating yourself
don't
is not working
half-ass
anymore.
it. Don't half-ass it. Always
That's
put
right.
your full ass in.
That's right. Put your full ass in. Because it's uncomfortable to go half-assed.
There
Sitting
you
on half
go.
a chair with one cheek off, one cheek on, that's not comfortable. And it hurts in the long run.
Exactly. No, just go full in. This is not the time to half measure things. It,
Yes.
it never is, really, but this is especially not the time for that.
Right.
Don't stand on the fence. Decide what you're doing and do it.
Yes. Play your part.
Hmm.
All right. And on that note, I'm Daniel Wolf.
And I'm Michaela Gaffinstone.
And until next time.
Until next time.